Welcome to Mind Over Money, the podcast that helps Australians have finances that work. And it all starts with our thinking. I'm your host, Lachlan Nicolson, and I'm joined by Archie Franz. G'day, Archie.
G'day, Lachlan. Good to be here again.
We're talking about the rising costs of living, what's causing it, and what you can do about it to get ahead. And this is part 2 of our series. And we're talking about the rising costs of food and groceries today. So stick around. Okay, this is part 2 of our discussion on the costs of living. Today we're focusing on food and food prices. Food makes up about 15 to 20% of a typical household budget, so it's a significant portion of our spending. How we spend our money on food also affects our physical and our mental health, and we'll talk about that later in the episode. But first, Archie, what's been happening with food prices lately, specifically at the grocery store?
Yeah. So we're still waiting for the March quarter, of fresh data to come in from the ABS. But looking at food prices last year up to December, we saw a 9.2% increase in food prices. So that's what the ABS, Australian Bureau of Statistics, are giving us there at the moment. Overall, household spending went up 17.8% for the year, and 8.8% of that was an increase on food. So we're just waiting for fresh data to confirm where things are up to now. But we have noticed that there's been a lack of, fresh fruit and veggies out there at the present time. And that would mainly be due to weather, so all that high levels of rain and flooding that we've had this last year has, it really has an impact on food crops, especially when it occurs, in our areas where we grow a lot of food like the Lockyer Valley, Darling Downs, and all the other places in Australia that grow a lot of food.
I think we can agree at like a hip pocket level. We can feel that groceries are getting more expensive lately. And I have also noticed that there seems to be less fruit and vegetables in stock at the shops. There's less quantity of those items.
Yeah. So we see this with fruit and veggies all the time, that we'll get this variation, especially if they're fresh. We're going to get a variation in what's available due to seasons and due to any of these weather anomalies that we're having. So look, obviously with petrol and fuel prices going up, that's adding costs to getting products to the shelf. So that's going to push up prices for us there. Not to mention all the fuel that's used in growing produce as well. So those higher fuel costs, they're definitely starting to flow through into higher prices in the shops for stuff that we're buying.
We've also got to find people to drive the food. We've had a huge shortage in truckies.
Yep.
The truckies have had a pay rise, a well-deserved one.
Yeah, big shout out to our truckies. We love you and thank you so much for what you do in delivering everything around Australia.
Yeah.
We couldn't live without you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
The other thing affecting things is the middleman. When we look at the middleman, so the middleman is someone in between. There's someone growing the crops, there's someone selling the crops when it comes to food, but then there's the supply chain. There's all the guys in the middle, and so they can be having an impact on food prices as well, because again they're paying for electricity, they're paying for equipment and stuff to be shipped around, they're paying wages, and so we have got these pressures that are coming through at the moment. But we've also got the middleman who's, selling our good stuff overseas and bringing in overseas stuff back to replace what they sold out of Australia. So the classic would be that, our oranges and mandarins tend to get sold overseas, especially to Asia, and then we'll buy in our citrus from the US. Because the US grows, a massive amount of citrus there. Is the quality as good? I don't think so. That's my personal opinion. I'd much rather the mandarins and oranges we produce in Australia. They're so much better than the US stuff that comes in there. And that's just part of the world today, where food is being moved around and being sold to get the best price.
You were telling me a story about that back in the 80s, the onion truck.
Yeah, that was a classic. That's when I was at Gatton College, and we had a massive shortage of onions in the market due to wet weather. And one farmer in the Lockyer Valley had loaded up a semi-trailer of onions, and he was shipping it off to the Brisbane market. But before the truck got to the Brisbane market, the Sydney prices had skyrocketed for onions, so he diverted the truck to Sydney. By the time his truck nearly got to Sydney, the Melbourne market had shot up in price. And when we say shot up in price, the price had really skyrocketed. They went from like $1 a kilo to $10 a kilo. And
Wow.
and so by the time he got to Melbourne, the Brisbane price had shot back up again. So then he diverted the truck back to Brisbane. But before it got to Brisbane, Sydney went up again. So I think they eventually got sold in Sydney. And he made this huge amount of money from this one truckload of onions because there was just no onions. And luckily enough, he had the truck on the road and he was in control of where that truck went. So, he did really well out of that one.
And I guess that's still happening today in some ways because we are moving food around between nations based on where the supply and demand is and who can grow it quickly and get it out and get that supply to market. So yeah, it's a lot more complex. So will food prices come down?
Well, food prices are cyclical. So yes, there's going to be changes in food prices. But also we've got to take in consideration what's it costing to get that food to us. And, some of those prices can't change. If we're paying more for fuel, if we're paying more for equipment, paying more to get it produced.
And electricity.
Yep, electricity. Yeah, so prices will stay up because of those things, but we're still going to get our cycles as well coming through.
Yeah.
It's always cheaper to buy food that's in season. That's the number one thing, is if you buy it in season, you'll always get it at its best price.
So between the people delivering the food and the electricity and the water and all those things involved, it sounds like there's a lot of contributing factors to food prices. Some are temporary and will pass. Some will come up and down based on the season. So I guess what we need to do, though, is change our mindset. And if we go with this narrative of food is expensive, because we read about that in the news, that can really lock us in our thinking to spending more on food when really there's room to be efficient. So, so what are some ways that we can be more efficient and we can save on our groceries?
Yeah, this is good. So the first one is loose fruit over packaged fruit or vegetables. And there's a choice article we've got in the show notes that you can have a look at that takes you through this. I've seen this ever since I was a kid and I used to go shopping for my mum, was that I always bought loose fruit and veggies. Because one, I could pick out which was good quality, and two, it actually was cheaper than buying the packaged stuff. I used to do the numbers on it all the time as a kid, and I still do the numbers on it and still find, it's cheaper to buy it loose. So, you'll have loose potatoes versus buying a bag of potatoes. So, so you'll find those loose potatoes can certainly be a lot cheaper than buying the bag of potatoes. But again, if you don't want to get your hands dirty, you're going to grab the packet that's already packaged up
and washed.
Yeah. Rather than buy the ones that are loose and dirty. But that's our preference. That's what we get to choose there. The second one is, go to the markets and support your local farmers. So, today there's a lot more local farmer markets, as well as the big markets that you've got in Brisbane and Sydney and Melbourne and that. But you can save a lot of money by buying locally. So at the moment, we've got a farmer just up the road from us here selling pumpkins and watermelons at half the price you buy from Woolies. And really good quality because they're fresh, they're just out of the paddock, and they're really good value. Or you go to a big fruit shop that does the same thing. You'll get the local fruit shop who will buy in local produce, and they'll specially have it there. It'll be loose, it'll be fresh, and it's usually cheap.
Yeah, we've been noticing a lot of young families going to the Yeronga markets in Brisbane or they call it the Brisbane fresh markets. And yeah, you can get a whole box of fruit and veg for $20, $25. And, that's usually including raspberries and strawberries, bananas, and all the rest. And, you can pick up some local honey and grab a coffee while you're there. And yeah, it's great. We love it. We do it every couple of weeks. It's good. And it's a good place to meet up with friends and have a great morning together. Okay, another one that we got here is go to Aldi for the basics. So Choice have got an article on this that Aldi has come in really nice in comparison with the other supermarkets, especially around basics like bread and milk. So yeah, sticking to those staples and really going for that value over those higher national brands. And there's another study there by Choice that found that the national brands are usually double what the budget brands are, but they're often no healthier. So they don't offer necessarily any more sustenance, but they are a lot more expensive. So, that could be things like, flour and milk and bread, all the basics. You can be buying budget brands, which are much, much cheaper, and be getting great value. And the quality of the food is very, very similar. It's really just the branding that you're paying that premium on when you buy those national brands.
Yep. And as we know, branding works. So, the music, the colors, the emotion, that the national brands generate, that's what gets us to buy them. So you got to fight off that whole branding thing to be able to buy the non-branded stuff. And usually the non-branded stuff is coming out of the same factory.
Yeah.
So
I've heard that.
Yeah, when I was a kid, when it came to the whole dairy side of things, there was so many factories across Australia, and they all had their own brand of cheese, their own brand of milk, and the products that they produced, even milk powder and stuff. And they were very different. They had very different ways of producing their products, and so they had very different flavors and textures and stuff. And so, you would go looking for the brand that you really liked for that flavor and that texture. But today it's not about that. Today's branding is about the sound, the color, the lighting, the ads. That's what the branding's about today. So, and coming out of the same factory. So it's not about, it's not about the food quality or the texture of that anymore. It's really about those other things there.
What's the next tip, Archie?
Our next tip is keep your fridge small. I've seen this over and over now that fridges have just got bigger and bigger. The stats on the wastage are getting bigger and bigger as well. So the bigger the fridge, the more stuff we put into it. Also, if we don't fill our fridge up, our produce will go off quicker because the fridge needs to be full to work efficiently and to keep stuff cold.
Yep.
So the bigger the fridge, we're often spending more money than we should be on stuff that we're just going to end up throwing out.
Yeah, well, more electricity and more on food. Yeah.
Yep. And, so Australian households, we're wasting 2.5 tons of food every year, which is 4 kilos per household per week. And that's food we could be eating.
2.5 million tons. Tons.
Yeah.
2.5 million tons of food each year. Wow. 4 kilograms per household per week. Wow.
Yep. And that's food we could be eating. And we're only throwing it out because, it could be that it's gone past its best before date, or it could be that we've just pushed it to the back of the fridge and haven't seen it. And eventually we pull it out and throw it away. We do find a lot of fresh fruit and veggies get thrown away because once we put them in the fridge, we don't often take notice of them. So that's where having a small fridge is really good, that you can only buy a small amount and you're going to use it before you put any more in there. So don't go shopping every day. That's always a disaster if you go shopping every day, because all you're doing is putting fresh stuff in them with everything else. And that's when stuff gets lost and you end up throwing it out. Best thing is, to work on running the cupboards down, running the food pantry down and the fridge down, and then going back out and shopping and buying up again and buying what's fresh, what's in season. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Another tip we got here is to buy snap frozen greens. We talked about this in the podcast before, Archie. Why buy snap frozen?
Because they're healthier and they're cheap. We used to grow all our greens local, and buy your greens local and cook them straight away, and have fresh greens. But today, our greens are getting shipped all over the country. They're even getting shipped into the country, so they're actually really old by the time we get to eat them. And so they've lost their value. Greens. The research shows that green vegetables lose their health values within a couple of days. So the sooner you eat them, the better. And that's where buying them frozen, snap frozen, is the healthiest. They're straight out of the paddock, straight into the factory, snap frozen, and then you pick them up off the shelf, cook them up in whatever you're cooking, and you've got your fresh greens there. Or even better, grow your own that you can pick straight out of the garden. That's the best way.
Love that. And the last tip we got here is just recognizing that takeaway and dining out is entertainment. It's not sustenance. So there's a big difference there. And the takeaway brands will try and market to us as if their food will sustain us, but they won't. So I have noticed this. There's been a big shift to dining out for dinner, and it's just not giving us that nutrients that we need. And it's also costing a lot. So groceries are going up, but then also the dining out and the takeaway is going up, and it's really chewed into people's finances.
So when we were putting all this together, Lachlan, you and I were talking about how much psychology goes into the supermarkets today, and the testing that they're doing. They're working out, how our pulse rate goes up when we look at certain products, and there's some pretty interesting stuff going on there. We don't realize how much we're studied and how much goes into making sure that we're buying that product off that shelf when we go to the supermarket. Yeah,
just like with the takeaway marketing and the dining out marketing, supermarkets have put a lot into this. Curtin University's Consumer Research Lab have done some pretty wild experiments about how different colors and placements and emotional manipulation can actually make us buy products. And some of that's been mentioned in this Choice article. So again, we'll drop the link in the show notes. It's about, or you can Google it, Choice Supermarket Sales Tricks. And they just give you some examples and some tips on how to beat the supermarkets at their own game, and how to recognize the kind of psychology that's been used for us to buy more products when we walk into a big supermarket. So Archie, in a moment, we'll talk about food itself and the health effects of food for what we eat. Before that, we hear a lot about the average weekly spend of food in groceries. We hear these stats being put out there. Are these actually helpful for us?
Look, what's the first question we get asked a lot is like, am I okay? Am I spending too much? We get pulled into that comparison trap all the time, and that's where we don't want to live. We don't want to live in that comparison trap. We want to be able to choose how much we're going to spend, how we're going to spend it. We're in charge of our lives. Probably what we've been saying before is there's a fair bit we're not in charge of at the moment because of all this stuff that's going on in the background. But our goal is to help people take control of their lives, know what's going on, and be able to overcome these things so that you can get your financial freedom. You can be in the place where you want to be and get rid of the comparison trap.
I love that. Yeah, and we've seen families of 6 feed themselves for the same cost as a family of 3.
Yeah.
So, it comes down to the decision. So when you see these, surveys, and again, these are surveys only of a couple of thousand people, when they go out and say, the average Queenslander is spending $159 a week on their groceries. It's just a shot in the dark average. And so, and by the way, who wants to be average? Average doesn't mean it's working. So you got to find what works for you. Again, it comes back to our cash flow system, setting a limit, planning ahead. What are we going to allocate towards food? Having that discussion with our partner, our spouse, really figuring out, if we want financial freedom, what percentage do we want to spend on food? And setting that limit, and then going out and making decisions based on that. And then you can get creative and find those ways to save, like we talked about some of those tips just before.
Yeah. And we do like to look at it as a percentage of net income, because every family is different in their net income. So we can have a family on one wage compared to a family with two wages. The family on one wage could have a much lower net income than the family with two wages because it all depends on taxation, Centrelink benefits, what's actually coming in. So you've got to look at things in relation to something that's stable, which is net income. And then you can do some calculations on that and work out, what's a reasonable amount to spend.
After the break, we talk about the food that we buy and how it affects our health and our wealth. Back in a bit. Let's talk about food itself. So what we put in our mouth obviously has an effect on our mind, our body. It also has an effect on our wealth because, medicine and medical costs are just enormous. So if we're not eating properly over a long period of time, we can be putting a lot of stress on our bodies and our mind. And so it's really all connected.
So we are seeing from a research point of view, we're definitely seeing research that is showing quite a large deterioration in our health due to what we're eating. Talking to naturopaths who work in this area, they're having to make large changes in the way people are eating to help people get their health back again because there's foods that are causing inflammation, and so inflammation leads to a lot of problems, including diabetes. And diabetes is just skyrocketing in Australia and in other countries as well. And it's just one of the forms of inflammation that's coming from food and the way that we're eating. And we do also have research that's showing us the way we're eating is also affecting stress levels. And so stress is then causing problems within the way the stomach works and the bowels and everything else. So we are seeing quite a lot of negative health factors coming in play due to the way that we're eating, due to stress in our lifestyle as well.
Yeah, wow. It's interesting that these takeaway brands too, they market themselves for when we're tired or when we're stressed or convenience. We're too busy to cook. So we go out and buy these, but then they make us more tired, more stressed, and they don't give us the sustenance that we need. So we eat more, and then we eat more calories are being consumed. And, I guess we step back and wonder why, as a nation, we are experiencing more health problems. And I guess this affects our wealth too, right? Like obviously, we need our minds sharp to do the work, which gives us an income. We need health and energy throughout the day to make good decisions. But then long term, there are these effects on our health that then we have to pay all this money in medical costs to try and fix that later down the track. So is it that we need to change our mindset around food from, I feel like it's 80% at the moment. Food is what tastes good and what feels good and is convenient, and then 20%'s, nutrients and sustenance. And really, it's food should be 80%. It's for our sustenance and nutrients, and then 20% it's pleasure. Have we just got the balances out of whack here? Like,
I think the way Australia developed, everyone had a backyard. That was what was so important, where we were developing Australia. So you go to the old suburbs and you got these great big backyards. Those backyards, when I was a kid, were full of fruit trees and veggie gardens. And so you actually grew a lot of stuff for yourself and for your neighbours. There was a community share factor that worked really well too, so that you had healthy food. That was such a big part of the Australian psyche. Today that's gone. You don't really see that, but I'm starting to see it come back when I'm watching different shows, gardening shows and health shows and lifestyle shows. There's starting to be a bit of a turn back to let's grow our own veggies, let's grow our own fruit. Let's work on the environment and start to get more sustainable about how we produce things. So it's starting to come back again. We're starting to get that back. one of the things, like you said before, there's these health effects, which we're going to talk about next week when we talk about insurances, because insurances are going up. Well, insurances are showing us what's happening in our communities.
Yeah, they do more research than anyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if we change our mindset away from convenience, which has been the prominent thing, is having convenience and going to a cafe for breakfast, or catching, just grabbing a quick drive-through meal at a drive-through for lunch, again for convenience. That's where we're having the nutrient problems, because these foods aren't the best foods for us. And then if we look at other cultures, like I especially look at the Indian culture and the Asian culture, well, India is part of Asia too, they have this ability to cook quickly and nutritiously, and with fresh ingredients. And I just love that about those cultures. And they're also very low cost. The way they cook and the way that they operate is very low cost as well. So, we mentioned the average before of $150 a week. These guys can be doing it for like $70 a week to feed a family of 4. And it's all fresh, and it's all cooked very quickly and healthily. And so, they don't need a takeaway lunch because they've already got a takeaway lunch, already prepared that they take to work with them.
Yeah, there's a lot we can learn from these cultures.
Yeah. And I think, as Australians, we have been led down a certain path by all the marketing and all the promotions and the way people have been, focused on, it's all about productivity, or keeping up with the Joneses. That comparison mindset, comes through there as well.
Yes, this is a great discussion to be having with our partners and our spouses. And, there are these simple mindsets we can catch out of this, like we've been talking about here, that mindset of I don't have time to prepare food. But really, we can prepare a lunch in under 10 minutes. So it's just about switching those mindsets. What are some other little quick things you think we're saying to each other that we could probably change?
Well, we often hear, I'm tired, I need another coffee or a Red Bull or something like that. When actually, what we need is some water and a stretch and a yawn, just to get the body reconnected again and up and running again. And even some sunlight, that will actually work better than the coffee or the Red Bull. Yeah.
Another one is, when you're thinking that you're hungry again, when really you're just thirsty and you need some water. So, carrying that water bottle around and drinking more water.
Yeah. And we see a lot more of that today. I'm especially seeing lots of kids carry water bottles now and drinking water all the time, which is really great.
It's great.
Just got to see the parents do the same now. And the good thing about kids is we actually learn from our kids. And so the kids are helping parents, to start to drink more water and think about these things too, which is great. Yeah. Look, the other classic one would be I'm too exhausted to cook dinner. And I've hit this one many times. Trish and I will be driving back from somewhere and we go, we're a bit worn out for cooking dinner. Let's get some takeaway. And then as we're driving, we're talking about the different takeaway foods, and every one of them I'm going, no. And then it's like, and then you start going, hang on, what's in the fridge? Oh yeah, that's in the fridge. Yeah, that's in the cupboard. That'll take us 10 minutes to cook dinner. Okay, we're just going home and cooking dinner. We're not going to waste our time trying to get some takeaway.
You wait 30 minutes anyway.
That's it. There's the time it takes to get the takeaway. But my brain was, it does process whether the takeaway is any good for me as well. And then I start thinking, I actually want something good to eat because I'm tired and I actually need some good food. And so that's where I'll start thinking about that. And sure enough, you shoot home and you cook up something and you go, oh, that was so much better than takeaway. Like, I love that mindset, that you go, that was just so much better than takeaway. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. So listeners, what are your mindsets that you can replace? We all have these mindsets. We can switch them over to more liberating ones that can get us thinking about the food that we're eating. We've just sort of, started to talk about this. There's obviously more we can say, but we're not food experts. And I should probably note, this is not health advice either. Don't take your health advice from a podcast. But I think this is a good encouragement just to get us all thinking about the food that we're buying, the food that we're eating, and how we can all make adjustments and improvements to benefit our health and our wealth.
Yeah. Hey, we had one last point there we missed, which was the food cooking shows. These guys really do mess us up because, we watch these guys cook this amazing food, but it's not the sort of stuff you're going to cook every day of the week. And it takes so long to cook, and the ingredients can be so complex. And that's where I say, I love, the Indian, Asian cultures and just how quick they can put stuff together and, come up with something really tasty and really nutritious. And it doesn't have to take, 2 hours to do it. My wife and I, we used to love watching Jamie Oliver, and then we bought his cookbooks and we started cooking his stuff, and then we're just going, oh, this is terrible. We love the food, but this is just so intense and so time consuming. Actually, he's got a good one out called Save with Jamie. That one is a really good one. Yeah, because that was using more of what you have in the fridge, nice simple recipes, really healthy. Yeah, we love that one.
Great. Save with Jamie, wherever books are sold. This is not an endorsement. So. All right, guys. Thanks, Archie. Well, next week we're going to be talking about the costs of insurances and how to keep them within your budget. Thanks as always for listening to Mind Over Money, and have a great week. See you next time.
Excellent. Thanks, Lachlan.
Mind Over Money is for education purposes only. It does not consider your personal financial situation. So if you'd like to speak to someone about your finances, including your home loan, head to our website, waymakerpodcast.com.au, and click Get Financial Help to get connected to one of our wealth partners.